Kevin, coming out of the holiday break, with everyone returning this week, how's just a healthier team, whether it's illness and whatnot, just how's maybe the personnel availability heading into this opener?
Yeah, pretty good for the most part. We only had one guy that kind of caught this flu bug that's been going around, which was a blessing. We've had at my own personal house, we've got family in town. I feel like everyone's been sick. So it's been, was glad no one else had to really deal with that. But everybody else, is healthy and ready to go.
Is one of the guys someone in the starting lineup heading into this game?
No. We're fully healthy
Okay.
now. Now I'm just saying, Tyler had a little bit of a flu-like deal for a day or two, but he's good. He practiced today and he's fine.
Gotcha. And then just wanted to ask you, just what have been areas of focus since returning from the break in practice, in preparation for K-State, but also Big 12 play at large?
Yeah, in terms of the second part of that question, I think, like getting a lot of notes and feedback from the coaching staff, and one common theme that I kind of kept coming back to in my own mind was, not trying to make some grandiose adjustment or statement about this, that, and the other. Like, I feel like at this point have a pretty good identity of how we want to play. There's some things that we wanted to maybe emphasize more than we have been and things like that. But feel like we're on a good path. So really just trying to shore up some of the things defensively, some just nuanced type things. And then I think big picture, though, for me, the message to the team was, we got to continue to do this together and be a group that's really, really connected on both ends of the floor, and really doubling down on that as we kind of gear towards Big 12 play. Understand that the margin for error is now going to be a lot smaller than I think it has been. That was something we talked about a lot today. And then in terms of Kansas State, it's a high-powered offensive team. They got a really good scorer in Haggerty. I think Bashir is one of the best shooters in the country, along with a few of the other guys on their roster. So we have to pay them the respect that they deserve as a three-point shooting team, but also understand that, Haggerty is kind of a one-man wrecking crew in and of himself. But been really impressed on tape with a few of their other players as well. They're not just a one-man band. There's some other guys that can really hurt you off the dribble as well. So wrapping all that up into our messaging is kind of where we've been.
All right, thanks, Mitch. We'll go Darnell, Jake, and then Jay.
Yeah, Kevin, we've asked you several times about your rotation and how comfortable you are with it. How comfortable are the players right now, do you think, on what their roles are heading into the Big 12?
I'd say more good than bad. I think obviously with Beto coming in, that impacts things. I feel great about our starting five. We've had a couple of different guys coming off the bench and help us. And so I think the role clarity in terms of what do I need to do to get on the floor, I think guys understand how that plays out. I think when you add somebody new mid-season, that still takes time to sort of flush itself out. But again, I do feel like guys have an understanding of the things that they need to do to get themselves on the court. And we'll see, who wins, jobs as it relates to the bench players.
And this is kind of a big picture question. There's a larger discussion going on right now about pros playing college basketball. You guys brought in Beto. Baylor just signed a guy who was drafted in 2023. There have been some pretty vocal coaches in college basketball about the subject. Where do you stand on this? Where do you think this issue might be going, or where it needs to go?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the discussion points there. I think my first thing I would say there is just the amount of respect I have for all the legends of the game as it relates to college coaching. A lot of guys I grew up watching and being fans of. And so, their broad experience and the longevity that they've had, I don't blame them for raising an eyebrow to the way things are going, because it's so different. And so, I barely know what I'm even doing in college. I'm still learning how to do this thing. And so it's just a really, really hard job. So I just have so much respect for any coach that's been able to do it for as long as a lot of these coaches have. In terms of how I see, what's happening, I think the big thing is understanding what the rules are and understanding that, you have to play within those rules, and being able to put together a team that you think is going to help you win. I think the opinion I have, and the thing I've heard a lot, is the idea of, what it does to the kids and what it does to the high school players. And so I don't know, my view is we're all like products of our own experiences, and that's how our opinions are formed, obviously. So my opinion on young basketball players has usually been in the NBA. When we get an 18, 19-year-old kid, or when I was in the G League for 9 years, and I get a kid that played at a power conference school, and he comes in and he's not ready to help us win, and he's got a long road ahead of him. And some of those guys flamed out and never made it, and their lives look a lot different than they could have if they would have stayed in school and kind of gotten more ready to play in the NBA. So I think in a lot of ways it's interesting, because I think we're kind of going back towards younger players sort of having to pay their dues. And I do understand where it does impact some high school players and young guys, but at the same time, I think it could really help if we kind of reimagine sort of what it looks like for a young player. I think, does it hurt young players that want guaranteed starting roles at power conferences? Yes, it's going to hurt those players, because you're going to want the older guys. But if those players take that as an opportunity to come in, and by the way, they're going to be making pretty good compensation to do that, put their time in, get better, be more physically ready when they do get to the pro game, then I think you have a much better recipe for guys to get that second contract in the NBA. And if you want to talk about life-changing, that's life-changing for a kid. A lot more than maybe having a starting role as a freshman is at a blue blood type school. So, I don't know if I'm fully on board with it. Totally hurts the kids. I think if we, like I said, reimagine, how it could actually help the kids and help them, just be ready when they do decide to go pro. And it's going to take, I think, the players, the high school players, the agents, the coaches in that world to understand it is different now. I spend a lot of my time educating agents on it is different now. And if people, I think for me, I would love to have, a roster chock full of young guys that are developing and ready to go when their number's called. Is that the reality? It's tough, because somebody's going to maybe give them more money to go somewhere else. They may have a bigger role. And so it's tough. It's just really hard. I don't think there's a right answer as it relates to how we can help the young guys. That's how I see it, being able to help the young guys. Now, in terms of the actual way the rules are written and set at the moment, like when the NCAA president came out and said what he said, for me, he didn't say anything groundbreaking. He just said, look, if a guy's been on an NBA contract, he can't play in college. And so far, that's exactly what's happening. None of these kids have played in the NBA. I mean, having come from that world, the G League and being drafted is not the NBA. Now, if they come out and change the rule and say, if you're drafted, if you've played in the G League, then you can't be a college basketball player, then okay, then we'll all go for that. But, I think in the big picture, I think everyone's trying to figure out, hey, what are the rules and how can we play within those rules? And I think that's what Baylor did. And kudos to them for figuring that out. And, it's just, you got to do it, or you're going to kind of be playing catch up.
Just as a quick follow-up, how has integrating video into the program because it's mid-season? That was another thing the coaches brought up, is bringing somebody in right in the middle of the season.
Yeah, it's never ideal. I mean, I've done it a lot in the NBA. Now, granted, it's different because you have more. I mean, in a lot of ways, you don't actually. If you look at when the trade deadline, and I get that this is not the NBA. Let me be very clear. I understand what I'm doing now is not the NBA. However, if you're making comparisons to the NBA, which in my world I do all the time because that's just what I did forever, it's no different than bringing a guy in before the trade deadline and you're trying to prep someone for a playoff run, which is essentially how I viewed us bringing in Beto. So I have comfort there. I've done it before. It's not easy. It's way harder than people think. We felt in our particular case that it was a calculated risk that we were willing to take. He's a great young man. He understands how to play, and he's unselfish, and he fits with kind of what we're doing. So I think it's situational. You throw the wrong guy in a mix midseason, the whole thing is going to blow up. And so you got to be super careful. In our own case, so far it's gone good. But we still have a lot of work to do to get guys on the same page. But again, that was a risk we were willing to take.
Thanks, Kevin.
We'll go Jay, and then we'll finish with Mitch.
Yeah, Kevin, just wanted to ask you, in terms of the length of the layoff you have here between games going into Big 12 play, what's your chief concern with that long of a lull?
I think just conditioning, wind, you know, just some of the continuity that was being built up. You know, you put a pause on that, and that's going to take a little bit of time to sort of regain. But I think we have a mature group, and I think guys understand. I feel great that we have, 3 of our 5 starters have played in the Big 12 before. They understand what is necessary to how you need to play and stuff like that. But yeah, I think conditioning and just overall sort of flow is probably what I'm the most kind of concerned about.
Just real quick on AJ, is there another level he can go to? He's been playing at a pretty elite level the last little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's I think where he can take it to another level is just figuring things out a little bit quicker. He's had obviously a lot of big second halves and things like that, but just, figuring out how teams are going to play him, earlier in games and stuff like that. Continuing to make the reads and stuff. I think defensively he can continue to improve, but yeah, I think all of our guys can get better, and he's no different.
Kevin, just following up on Jake's question about the rest or rust dilemma, have you guys done anything different, maybe scrimmaged a little more or anything to kind of get back up to playing speed?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we're trying to be smart, though. I mean, we have a world-class sports science and performance team, and I rely heavily on Michael Davey and his group, Jordan Brady, Rob Ramos. I listen to those guys pretty strictly so that we make educated decisions as it relates to load and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it impacted our preparation today a little bit. We probably played a lot more and did less Kansas State specific things than we would have maybe if it was a normal type deal where we weren't coming off of a break, but we were able to weave in a lot of that stuff and sort of combine it. So you just kind of had to get a little bit more creative with our prep, but felt very strongly that our guys needed to, play as much as they could.
And then a lot was made of your preseason schedule and a major upgrade from last year. Now that it's over, are you pretty happy with how it all played out? And did you get out of it what you wanted?
Yes, I'm happy with how it all played out. I mean, I think we could have probably threw in another quad 1 or 2 game on top of what we did. I don't know the value the value in some of the quad 4 games for sure. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to re-examine sort of what we did and what we can do moving forward. But in terms of what we had scheduled and what we did, yeah, I thought we got a lot out of it. And I think it helped our guys be more ready for Big 12 play than we were last year at this point.
All right, we'll finish with Midge.
Yeah, Kevin, just real quick, wanted to follow up on bringing up the reimagine piece, possibly with NBA draft picks possibly playing in college basketball. Curious, if you during Christmas break hit up maybe your NBA contacts and thought, could this be like a draft and stash thing in the future where NBA teams look to maybe have guys playing longer in college basketball? Do you think that could be something that happens with this sport reimagine look?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything's on the table. If you just use this one as an example, if you draft a young man with the 31st pick and that young man, for whatever reason, doesn't think he's ready or the team doesn't think he's ready and he can get into a situation that helps him develop, he can get compensated well. I think there's a lot of probably intrigue for the NBA team as well as the player. There's some inherent risk involved there because you're not in the building of the NBA team and things like that. So there are some negatives, but yeah, I mean, look, if you can draft a guy and stash him in Europe, why wouldn't you want to stash him in the States? So I'm sure it's going to open up some discussions. Obviously, there's a lot of people that I do talk to on a regular basis about personnel and about the draft and about recruiting and things like that. So I think it's just an example of you just have to stay ahead of, not even ahead. It's impossible to stay ahead because you don't know what's coming around the next turn. But once you do understand what the kind of rules are, which that's the hard part. I mean, I'm a year and a half in. We're on about the 5th iteration of the rules. And so just have to understand what the rules are and what they allow. And then does it fit your philosophy, your culture, your program? And then you make a decision based on that and you move it forward.
And then real quick, last year's Kansas State team, completely different this year. Can you even use that as a reference to pick up maybe tendencies, or is that even in your prep for K-State? Is that even a reference point at all?
Not really. I mean, they've new players, couple returners, but mainly new. Their main guys are new. They brought in a new coach that's doing a lot with their offense, so that looks different as well. So no, I think it's wasted effort if you try to go that route with this particular group.
Thanks, Kevin.